So the panel will talk about their programs, and they'll probably answer a lot of questions that you have. So who would like to start first to give an overview of your music-related programs? Multidisciplinary, I guess, as well.
So I'll just jump in. For Aboriginal arts, we don't require, it's
And this is Ontario
Arts Council speaking. Aboriginal arts projects are for artists who self-identify within the definition of Canada. So that can be Métis status, non-status Inuit. We ask you to sign off on a form, a legal form, and so it's open. It's open to all Aboriginal peoples in Canada that are residing in Ontario. As for just to reiterate again, the difference between coming to an Aboriginal program, the decision really isn't about where will I strategically be more successful, what are the higher success rates. That's usually what people ask. I think it's about knowing who you want to assess your application. So you're guaranteed, all of the programs here, decisions on grants are made by an artist panel, a jury process. They're paid to, they're invited to come in, and it's my job to facilitate that group coming together. And so we'll read the applications beforehand and then look for a jury panel that can represent and speak to those applications as best as you can. Have 5 people speak to maybe 100 applications. Yeah, so just keeping that in mind, it's always all of the panels, we try to keep a really broad range of diversity, whether of nations, of regions, and disciplines. And I think there's, as far as writing, it's when you're navigating any arts councils, it can be very overwhelming. But really giving the officer a call or starting at the website and doing your research will help you get started, because we have over 60 programs at the OAC, including writing and all different stages of writing, like works in development. Once you start to get an idea and sense of what you're looking for, then you can pick up the phone and talk to either general information or any of the contacts that are available. But a good start is really, like, you might even get ideas just looking at programs out there for music. And if you're looking for more experience, then you might want to be looking in professional development and training. But it sounds like your next stage is definitely talking to other inspiring artists and asking, starting to really just say, what do I want to do? What am I, that's just my...
Sarah, maybe you could just give them an idea of what the music programs are also for individual or, say, a presenter.
So music, I'm speaking to a term called popular music, which is a term that is, popular and world music is a way of categorizing everything that is not classical or opera. So it's somewhat of a colonial frame benchmark, but that's the way popular music and world music has evolved. Just that you're aware. It's sort of like, I'm sure you can make lots of parallels. But so that could encompass anything that's not classical, really, every genre. And within popular music, there are two deadlines a year in 2 categories. One is for recording, and that's up to 10,000, and one is up to 5,000 for really exploration. It could be the category 1, that exploration period, is really about finding. You may not have found your audience yet. You're really still in exploratory stage. You might want to be doing a demo, but you're not expected to come out of that with an LP and ready to tour. So it's sort of like the gradual, so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And there's also a great program called Presenter and Producer, and those are for presenters who are presenting music. So, for example, a lot of the music events here this weekend were made through different the music presenters program at the OAC, or if they contributed to this.
And also there's the multidisciplinary festivals program at the Ontario Arts Council, and Sarah might touch on the career access program as well during this conversation.
At the Canada Council, as a whole, we have roughly 144 programs available in all the disciplines and interdisciplinary, as well as our Equity Office and the Aboriginal Arts Office. We also have 39 prizes that are given out. In the music section specifically, we have 16 programs that range from travel to touring, recording, concert production, commissioning of Canadian compositions, grants to professional musicians so that you can take some time to either go study with a professional or compose some music if you need some time off from performing for a while, so we help with the living costs. And of course, we also fund organizations. We have 2 Aboriginal specific programs, the Aboriginal People's Music Travel Grants and Project Grants. The project grants are for individuals and organizations, and same thing with the travel grants. That's for individuals, bands, and ensembles to travel throughout Canada or internationally.
Music bands, not band councils. Right?
But don't.
Our funding programs are really divided into the festivals, fairs, and the arts funding program. Those are the 2 big ones. There's other smaller ones. And so under arts funding program, which is a big envelope that kind of hosts all these various disciplines, you will have funding for amateur and professional arts organizations, and then you have funding for individual artists who can come in from all disciplines. And then it breaks out from there. So music applications will be hosted within that larger funding program. And as an individual artist, the funding program that you would look into would be the Creation and Production Fund for Professional Artists, which aims to support local professional artists, again, from all disciplines and backgrounds. And the purpose of this fund is to support professional artists in the creation and production of new work, or to help them complete work that's currently in progress. And like the Canada Council, the funding is intended to cover project costs as well as living expenses. So if you just want to take some time off, sit somewhere and compose your music, that's where you would apply to. And in terms of eligibility, I don't want to go into too much details. All of this information is found online. I left some pamphlets in the back if you want to get it. It's, as you know, there's a number of eligibility requirements that you need to meet. You have to be 18 years or older, and you have to be a professional artist residing in Ottawa. Those are the 2 big ones. And a professional artist under our lens would be an artist who has completed specialized training in the arts discipline or has received mentorship, which is equally as valuable, has significant history of professional public exposure, and is considered and recognized by professional peers, and also has received professional fees for service. So those are just the definition that we look at for a professional artist. As I said, there are other streams that you might want to look at, but for individual artists, that's really the one in the music discipline, at least.
Great. So maybe with all of that information, first of all, I'll ask, anybody have a question? They're thinking about everything. It's great, all of these incredible, diverse range of programming that is offered, and artists. Do I have something on my face?
No,
Oh.
I wanted to ask you something.
Oh.
I
She's
mean,
like
I wanted
gesturing.
to add something because
Sure.
I think I agree that a program officer is a great resource, but I also think an even greater resource are your artists in your community,
Yeah.
or people who know you and can give and may have had more experience. Well, obviously, I guess if you're going for advice, but and not just necessarily one person, but that can be a really good, equally as important place. So are
Yeah,
those
somebody
networks
who-
with each other, us like as artists with each other also.
Right, and like probably somebody who's received a grant, ran through the whole process, or was also turned down from a grant because you know the competition. Maybe you could talk a bit more about the competition, because sometimes it's not always about your artistic merits. It's the competition's stiff out there, and there's a limited pocket of money. So
I can talk to that, at least in our case. We have way more applications than we could ever fund. So it is stiff. If you don't receive funding, that does not mean that your application wasn't necessarily highly assessed and highly rated. It's just a matter of how much money is available. And you know, it's the way it is. And I always tell people, you know, you just have to keep that in mind and come back and try again.
Natalie, maybe you could talk about how many applications come into the music recording program, and actually the percentage that, do you know, sort of?
Yes,
Just,
actually.
yeah.
Well, the music production grants has been in place since October 2011, sorry, and has received, you know, great amounts of applications, around
Say for one deadline.
One deadline
in
is
the recording program, yeah.
yeah, in the recording component is just under 400, and that program has a limit of $20,000 ask. So we're lucky when we get a 16% success rate.
So 16%. So just keep that in mind. Like, don't walk away and give up if you're turned down from a grant, because it also depends on the jury makeup, and maybe you could talk about that. I know, Sarah, you wanted to.
Well, it's a
maybe
bit
add something.
higher, I would say, at the OAC success rate. So in a popular music deadline, there may be, it's usually about 400 applications, and about it's about a 25% success rate. In Aboriginal, and that's the most competitive program at the Arts Council, because there's so many there are a lot of musicians. There are more musicians than performance artists, just putting it that way. And then in Aboriginal arts, it's about 30%, which would be about average for all the other programs at the Arts Council. But one tip would be to look at what every Arts Council has to have priority, and so to really dig in there and looking before you get started on what things are being scored on. And at the OAC, we're not just looking at artistic, we're looking at the impact of your project. And that's that's a very different approach than other arts councils. So that's one of the areas that is equally weighted with your artistic merit, your impact, and the third area is viability. So that means the budget, the nuts and bolts. But
So that's directly the assessment criteria.
of all
she's
our
talking-
programs, yes. So when you're writing it, rather than thinking, what are my outcomes, which always messes with my head, because everything has an outcome. If you do nothing, it has an outcome. But keep in mind when you're framing it, what is the impact? Impact. So what is the impact on my career, on my audiences, on my my touring capacity in the future? It's going to depend on what your project is and what you're asking for. On my like the Digging Roots project, maybe on my people, like as my Anishinaabe people, for next generations. But it can be really broadly interpreted, but something to keep, I think it's a good process to keep in the back of your mind, because that's what's going to make you stand out. You can, even if it's an artistically just incredible project, but what if it exists in a vacuum? It still has to have an impact, I think. Or you would want it to have impact.